the next year, I was riding with my sister, and she was pregnant at the time with my niece. And a car came out of the parking lot and slammed right into my side of the car.
Wow.
And I hit up against the frame of the car, ended up with severe whiplash, took the natural curve out of my neck. And, when they did the x-rays, it showed my neck actually straight and curving opposite direction. And I started getting, all this problems from it and went through therapy. Well, while I was in therapy, I got a call back from the phone company, said, hey, we want you back. You could have your job back in this, day, and the other, but you have to start at this time. And I was like, oh, well, I'm in therapy, so that won't be possible to start at that time. They're like, well, we can't guarantee, your job if you don't start by this time. I said, oh, well, you're probably going to have to keep the job then, because I won't be starting at this time. So I was relieved because I didn't want to go back. And so for me, that was like the perfect reason not to go back. It's like car accident, can't come back. And that set me on a life of exploration, because it was not too long after that I ended up taking an intern program at Time Warner Communications. It was Cablevision at the time. It got bought out by Time Warner, AOL and all that. And I learned production, and I started working on shows.
Welcome to the Grind and Gratitude Show. Let me first start by saying Coach Stone is in the building. If you are an avid listener to the radio, to the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time, then hopefully you're going to have some nuggets that you're going to take away from this conversation. Now, when I bring you guests, it's always people that I believe in, people I admire, people who are making a difference out here in the world. And the guest that I have today is amazing. You're in for a treat. So let me just tell you a little bit about him before we jump into the conversation. With clients ranging from nonprofit organizations to authors to cyber geeks to artists, chefs, CEOs, business moguls, consultants, media strategists, and innovation experts, Jason Hodge, aka the Jason Hodge, I love that, is building a legacy of helping those who work with, who want to articulate their authentic stories. And we talk a lot about stories on this podcast, to reach their impact and provide sustainable producing solutions that benefit the up and coming generations. He's a writer, a director, a producer, and former interim program director at Time Warner Communications, Faithpreneur, and recipient of the Faithpreneur Weekend 2020 Legacy Gala Leadership Award. Definitely got to dig into that. Jason is a dad and a family man who spends much of his time raising his 4 boys, mentoring clients to help them get past their roadblocks, building upon the media mentorship and culinary program, serving kids and families in marginalized communities. Really, really important work in public school districts and virtually. And he's really about, he's a health curious individual and educators alike through a newly developed series of healthy, tasty, non-toxic cuisine. I love that. His program is on task to produce their first new media television network in support of his community partner-based programs by Q3 of 2020. This man is doing so many things. Let me welcome you to the show, the Jason Hodge. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Hey, bro, how you doing? Hey, that's 2022, by the way.
2022, yes, right. Q3 of 2022. That's right, that's right. So, man, you're doing so many things. How do you find time to do all of these things?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it's just a very organic process. Yeah, that is a good question. It's an organic process. I don't particularly figure that I've got to find time. The time kind of finds me, and that's probably the only answer I have. The time finds me. I run into opportunities, and I know that it's the hand of God. It's the hand of God to be able to do that. So, yeah.
So you've been in media for a long time.
Yeah.
How did you end up kind of getting into media? Let's start there.
I fell into that too. I used to be a director assistant operator back in the early 90s. And I got into a car accident. And so I was in therapy. And I remember I had gotten fired from the phone company, mind you. Yeah, it was a whole other thing there. And the day that I got fired was like my liberation day. I went in there with a smile on, and my friends were like, well, I got suspended pending investigation. That was the key term for we're getting your check ready. You're out of here. And so I had the option of going to my family reunion, which was in Michigan, or hanging around to see what was going to happen with my job. So I was like, oh, I'm going to my reunion. And my uncle was like, well, do you want to do that? I mean, don't you think you should stick around just in case? I said, well, whether I have the job or not, I'm going to my reunion because I haven't seen you all in so long. So if I get fired because I'm going to the reunion, then c'est la vie, it's been great. If I keep my job, but I don't get to see you all, then I may as well be fired because I haven't seen you all in so long. So I said, no, I'm going to go and see you all. That was the only thing on my mind. So I went. When I came back, I didn't go back into the company for them to do the exit interview. They mailed my check. And then the next year, I was riding with my sister, and she was pregnant at the time with my niece. And a car came out of the parking lot and slammed right into my side of the car.
Wow.
And I hit up against the frame of the car, ended up with severe whiplash, took the natural curve out of my neck. And, when they did the x-rays, it showed my neck actually straight and curving opposite direction. And I started getting, all this problems from it and went through therapy. Well, while I was in therapy, I got a call back from the phone company, said, hey, we want you back. You could have your job back in this, day, and the other, but you have to start at this time. And I was like, oh, well, I'm in therapy, so that won't be possible to start at that time. They're like, well, we can't guarantee, your job if you don't start by this time. I said, oh, well, you're probably going to have to keep the job then because I won't be starting at this time. So I was relieved because I didn't want to go back. And so for me, that was like the perfect reason not to go back. It's like car accident, can't come back. And that set me on a life of exploration because it was not too long after that I ended up taking an intern program at Time Warner Communications. It was Cablevision at the time. It got bought out by Time Warner, AOL and all that. And I learned production and I started working on shows. And one day I had worked on like some comedy show. It was a lot of electronic field productions, EFP, they called it. And one day I happened to be at the studio. I was the only intern there. And the commercial side of the building, they said, hey, we need an intern to work with us on this project. So then the director at the time, he says, oh, take Jason, he's good. So then they're like, okay. So I ended up going over there, started gripping, and then became production assistant. And then next thing I was working on a bunch of different broadcasts. We did an NFL shoot and, it just kind of kept on, snowballing from there. Wow. And then I started working for the company and, went from intern to employee as a cable caster. So I used to make sure that I used to basically pop tapes in machines,
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything like huge, like, oh my gosh, you were a cable caster. I put tapes in machines and then I made sure that the clients who were buying time that their commercials were airing on the programs. And so I did that. And then my boss took a liking to me. And she was like, Jason, I need to teach you how to do what I do so that when I go on vacation, I can be confident that somebody could take over. So I went into managing their database. And so I managed, I think we had about 1,500 or so producers on the file. And I used to make sure that their shows were scheduled and aired on time. And I learned how to work with the program that we had at there. I think it was called Q&A. And she showed me how to build macros. And I started building macros. And then I started building master macros that govern macros. I got real geeky about it. Before I knew it, I started producing shows. And then at one point, when she was leaving the company, she was actually leaving the department and going over to marketing. And she says, Jason, I want you to take over what I'm doing. You should apply for the job. And she goes, because I'm not going to be here, but you know what you're doing already. I've trained you. You've taken it to another level. So then she didn't end up getting started in marketing on time because she was like, they have up until this time for me to start. And if I'm not in the marketing department fully, I'm leaving. And she was independently wealthy. Her husband owned a Cessna. I mean, they used to fly all over the world. She was pretty amazing. And I said, okay. And then she left. And then I applied for her job, but they said, well, no, you're not qualified. But they had me train her replacement.
Isn't that something that's always interesting? You're not qualified, but here, train the next person. I thought I wasn't qualified.
Right. And so then after that, what ended up happening, was I ended up, leaving the company, but I freelanced with them, did some jobs here and there. I still remained an intern and still did my thing there because it was just access to some really good equipment. And, so I just hung in there doing my little projects here and there. And then I got into producing radio. Wow. And then so from there, I started producing at a company down in Los Angeles, really enjoyed it, started interviewing people. And I learned that I really enjoyed the story. It's like, tell me your story and tell me what the significance is of your story. Like, why does what you do make such an impact on people's lives? And I just became very people curious over that time. So that's how I literally fell into it. I did not have a plan that I was going to be doing any of this.
But I think what you're saying is really, that's an amazing story, going from something tragic that happened, which is, getting into a car accident, and thankfully you and your sister were fine. Mm-hmm. But I think there's something there with taking a not so good or what could be a tragic situation and using that as an opportunity to springboard or to be open to other opportunities.
Right.
And I see that with a lot of people. Like sometimes in our mind, we have our career path laid out or our life laid out. And when it doesn't go the way we want, we miss all of these opportunities because we're so focused on the way that it's supposed to go.
Right.
So what was it for you that just kind of like throughout your life just made you kind of curious and go with the flow and explore new opportunities, right? Like what was it that, because a lot of people might have been like, nah, I'm not gonna be an intern. Are you crazy? I go from working to an intern. So what was it for you that just kind of was like, you saw it as an opportunity?
I'd intern any day. I'm gonna tell you, I've been on over 3,000 productions.
Wow.
And every time I've been on a production, I always learn something. And to me, being able to learn and I would sit there and I've been on the Universal lots. Matter of fact, I was in one of the Austin Powers movies, the Spy Who Shagged Me.
Oh, wow.
I was an extra. And it was funny because I was on a commercial and I met one of the casting agents for that movie on there. And so he said, Jason, you'd be perfect for this movie. I had never heard of Austin Powers. And they had another movie before The Spy Who Shagged Me. And he was like, you'd be perfect for this movie, because I had an afro, a beard, beatnik thin. And I was like, yeah, okay. So he says, you gotta go down and audition for it. So I didn't end up going down initially. And then he called me. He's like, Jason, did you go down? I was like, no. He says, okay, they're having an audition this weekend, go on over there. And so I went and I saw this huge line. And I was like, I'm not going to stand in this line. So I went to a party instead. At that time, Shanice, I don't know what Shanice's last name is, but her name was Shanice Wilson. She was having a party. And so I was friends with, her people and all of that. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to Shanice's party, because, they all were into food also. So, we talked food and movies and whatnot. And then I got a call from Ray, like later on that week. He's like, did you go? I was like, oh, that was way too much of a line. I wasn't going to wait. So then he says, okay, I talked to the casting director, his bosses, told them about you. You need to go. And I was like, so then I called them and they're like, okay, you know what? Ray said that, you'd be perfect for this. And they said that, you are skinny, you got a fro and this, that, and the other. And like, is this true? I was like, well, yeah. And they said, okay, send us a picture. And if you're lying, we're going to kill you, but we're going to cast you. So I ended up going down to the casting, call in Hollywood. And then so when I walked in, they're like, oh my gosh, you're perfect. So then I started, I think it was a few days after that is when I was on set. And then they dressed me up in this thing. You'll see it in the opening session of that movie. And it was one of the most fun times that I had, because just kind of watching the movie come together and all of the things that took place, every one of the moving parts, I was like, this right here, I could do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't even about the pay. It was about, and we did get paid really well for that one, because we went into golden times. We shot for 16 hours that day.
Wow.
Yeah. Messed my foot up though, but I was in shoes that were too tight. And I was like,
so like the love for media, you seem to have that love for media early on. And so how did you make the transition from, working for other people to kind of getting into your own entrepreneurship journey in your own business and then helping other people with media? How did that whole journey happen?
That's a good entrepreneurship journey. That's a good phrase on that. I got into it. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I don't know if I know anybody in my family who doesn't have something that they do aside from their 9 to 5.
Okay.
My mom, we started out in the entertainment industry. My mom, she was an exec. She was over publishing in the music industry.
Oh, okay.
And she did a lot. A matter of fact, the things that she did in her work revolutionized how music is done today.
Really?
Yeah. So like when you see the pictures or the shows and all of that have the music in them from the artists, that was part of her work. Now that you see the producers and the writers of the music, them having prominence, that was her work as well.
Really? That's amazing.
She was the one who spearheaded the not only recognition, but instead of you just knowing the celebrities who sang the song, her campaign launched the careers of the writers and the producers who put the songs together. She was the one who had the meeting with Lionel Richie before he jumped out of the Commodores and then became a solo act.
You serious? Wow, that's big.
She had a
that's
meeting
major.
with him, and then she asked him, hey, what do you want to do? And so when he says that he wanted to write ballads and he wanted to do this, she says, well, you're going to need to make a decision. So she set him up with her hairdresser. And then she's like, you have to get your image together and all that. So her hairdresser got him together and all that. And he stepped out in a solo career. And he did, well, of course, great things, It's
Lionel Richie, yeah, of course.
So, we were the Motown family. So it was, very, very, very interesting life in a good way for us.
So the entrepreneurship was in you from a young age. Mm-hmm. And then at what point did you decide, okay, now it's my time to kind of get out of these jobs and really start to spread my wings and really launch my own, business?
I can't even say that it was that definitive. I never said like, oh, now it's my time to do this, because even when I worked the 9 to 5s, I never saw them as the answer. I saw them as I'm working a job right now. But I always had this internal thing that I wanted to explore stuff. And I'm still exploring stuff. So I think that when you are creative, you just find different mediums to express that creativity. I'm a chef, so my kitchen is the medium. I get in there and I will get down with some ingredients and do some things that will just, it'll grow your hair.
Oh, wow.
And, I get down with the get down in the kitchen. I love food. And so with everything that I do, when I sit with it for a while, I ask the question of what story is it telling? So with food, it's the harmony of how those ingredients come together. With
Yes.
people, it's the harmony of how their voices, their intentions come together. So when I'm working with people or with clients and I am ferreting out their story, I ask questions that aren't just something that you get on a form document, because
Yeah.
I really truly want to know, who are you? What are you about and why do you do what you do? Because if your authentic voice isn't coming to the forefront, I mean, that's my tower garden in the background. You got to excuse the extra
That's okay.
ambiance. But yeah, if you're not telling your story through what you do, you're wasting your time. And so my job when I'm working with a client to help them get to that core is to ask them those questions that aren't going to be the questions that get you the run of the mill answer. Is to ask the questions that's going to get to the truth of the matter. What's the core? Who are you? And then let's display that.
But that's a great question, because there's so many people who feel stuck in a job right now,
Mm-hmm.
who are constantly looking out the window, wishing they were somewhere else, doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are like great fundamental questions for people to ask themselves, like,
Yeah.
who are you at your core? How do
Mm-hmm.
you want to serve others? Like, start to ask if you're not happy with where you are, I tell people this all the time, in any area of your life, you only have to ask yourself one question: what am I going to do to change my situation?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the questions that you ask clients, I think they're questions that people just either don't know or don't want to ask themselves, because once you start to ask yourself elevated questions, now you have to start to think about that. Yeah, why am I at this job 10 years later when I only wanted to be here for 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love what you're talking about in terms of what's your story, what type of impact do you want to make? These are all questions that anybody can ask themselves right now with where they are. And that's really, really, really important.
And there's a key to that, though, because we can ask ourselves that question or somebody else can ask us that question. But the bigger question is, how honest and transparent are we willing to allow ourselves to be? Because we tend to answer questions through the filters of what we believe we're supposed to answer. It's like, I'm not really supposed to say that I don't want to be this high-powered lawyer. I want to be a juggler in the circus. Like, something's wrong with that. So I can't really own that.
Right.
But when you do own the fact that, yeah, you may be a high-powered lawyer, but that juggling thing can't let you go, there's something about it, then when you embrace that, you may find that you end up with a juggling agency. Just because you have a hobby doesn't mean that you can't extract multiple revenue streams from it to take care of you better than doing the 9 to 5 or the career that you find yourself stuck in. It's just a matter of thinking it through and seeing, well, where are the leverage points? I have this saying, this acronym that I have been teaching for years: HELP, HELP, honor every leverage point. What are your leverage points in life? How do you help yourself and help others? What things do you bring to the table? And then how deeply do you look at them so that when all is said and done, you are getting the most return on investment in everything about you?
That's so good. I love that acronym, HELP. I love that. That's really good. And so, like, what would you say to people? Because I think sometimes in life we're supposed to be one dimensional. You're supposed to have one thing that you do and just do that thing. And you're doing everything. You're a chef. You have a media company. You're doing all of this, great community work. Like, you're doing so many things. How do you deal with people who try to tell you that you should only be doing one thing? Like, how is it possible? Like, do you get people like that, and how do you deal with them?
I don't deal with them. And, I think that it comes down to this. I don't think that the mechanism is the mission. Ultimately, what I do and the talents that God has given me, it opens the door for a conversation. And I believe that, and everybody has their thing, I guess, but for me, I believe that my design is to represent God in what I do. And in order to do that, I have to constantly ask myself the questions like, okay, is there more? Have I left anything on the table? What am I supposed to do now? And then give me that mindset so I can stay intentional about what I'm doing, so that I always remember that when I'm here, you're here. So then how do I make sure that I don't mess it up by just me showing up? It's like, okay. And so for me, it's always the doors that I find myself walking through. Those are the doors that he's opened for me.
Mm.
And because of that, I'm going to tell you, I have not found myself in any area that has been just by conventional means. Like, okay, I grinded this out, I worked for this, and now I'm here.
Right.
No, I've had a conversation. That conversation led to impact, and that impact led to a invitation.
Mm.
And even at the studio, God has orchestrated it that way. I ended up on shows that folks had been there for years and weren't selected for.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, get Jason in here. I've been put on sets and they're like, okay, I'm there to do one thing, but I find opportunities to do the other things. And it's not like I've been looking like, okay, I'm going to scheme and get in there. Now I'm in, it's been like, all right, I see this area over here. And, I think that if we just did this and we tweaked the light this way or whatever that is, and then the production ended up being like, okay, that really worked. So I think that it's just a matter of understanding what your talents are and letting them do what they're supposed to do. So then they will make the room. God says that his talents make room for us. So we just let those do that.
That's so good. And you talked about, having an impact. My whole mission is to help hero entrepreneurs make more impact, income, and influence. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about impact, I think sometimes people get focused on, oh, well, I'm not this person. I can't stand on a stage like this person. I don't have the personality like this person. And then the comparison starts because you're looking at people who appear to be making a great impact. And we don't understand that sometimes it's just a one-on-one thing. Sometimes you taking the time to share your story, fight through a difficult situation, chase a goal or a dream that is so far out of reach that stretches you. It's all of these things that I think sometimes we just get caught up with comparing ourselves to other people. And because of that, we just play small, right? Yeah. We're just like, okay, I'm just going to set the bar so low that it's not going to change my life in any way. I don't have to worry about failure. I don't have to worry about other people's opinions. It'll just be so low that it's okay. And I like the fact that you said you just walk in faith, know that you're meant to do something bigger, and it'll come to you. And so you talk a lot about being a faithpreneur. Like what is that? Talk about being a faithpreneur.
Faithpreneur. Okay, so Dr. Stacy NC Grant, good friend of mine, absolutely love her and her whole family. They're just awesome. So I met Dr. Stacy on, I don't know if you remember this app, Blab. Remember Blab?
I don't remember Blab, no.
It was like the precursor to, well, a few things. Blab was like a mixture of Periscope. I don't know if you remember Periscope.
Yeah, I remember Periscope, yeah.
So Blab and Periscope, they kind of like were here at the same time. Blab maybe a little bit before Periscope or kind of like simultaneous. And so Dr. Stacy was on one day and she had just started, working in her social media stuff. And I ran into her on Blab. I was like, hey, welcome to Blab, And so I saw that she was doing some things. So I was like, okay, let me show you how to do this a little bit better. And then we ended up becoming friends because then I saw her on Periscope afterwards. I was like, oh, hey, saw you on Periscope. How are you doing? And then that turned into a friendship, which now we're family. I mean, she calls mom,
Yeah.
My family knows her and her family. And so she had this book and she still has it. It's a great book. Action despite the distraction.
Yes.
And it is okay. And so the book, it just really goes into how do you get the things done despite the obstacles that come your way. And I mean, the book itself totally represented the book itself because 2 weeks before it was to go to print and publish the whole thing, her book was erased off of her computer.
What?
2 weeks before, yeah.
It was erased?
So it was erased. Her file went missing, everything. And she had this launch party and everything in New York already set up. I mean, like, it was a big deal. And she's got some big deal people in her space. So all these people are like booked in, they're going to this event. And so I get a call. She's like, Jason, do you know anything about formatting books? And I was like, nah, sis. No, I don't. And I didn't even know or think that I had the ability to be a quick study on that. I'm like, I can't touch that. I said, let me see if I don't know if I know anybody. So, racking our brains. And I remember the conversation. Matter of fact, trying to think if I still have that. Anyway, so she ended up finding a formatter. And it was like over the weekend. Now her launch party, I think, was on Monday or Tuesday or something like that. The lady was on vacation and she's like, yeah, I've got this thing, the book got erased, blah, blah, blah. So she's telling the story. And she's like, okay, so when do you need this? She goes, like in a couple of days. She's like, a couple of days. Like, and she said that, if it was any other circumstance, the lady probably would have told her, yeah, because it's not even like she knew the lady, like they had like this,
There's no relationship.
No relationship, nothing for her to pull back on to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do this because, you're just my girl or anything like that. None of that was there. The lady goes ahead and she takes it on, and gets the book formatted and all that like in a day. Okay. And then sends over the files to any other. Dr. Stacy is sending it over to the printer. The printer shut his business down for the day to produce the book. Wow. Now, this is the day of the event. The event starts. She still has no books in her hand.
Talk about cutting it close.
Her mother and sister were across town. And this is New York, Brooklyn. So the across town isn't like we're 5 minutes up the street.
No.
You already know, right?
Yeah.
Her mother and sister are picking up the books and stuff. They're coming through traffic across town. The event has started. Next thing, they come through the doors with the books. The event is going on. So that was the first major lesson in, regardless of what happens, what you think is happening, you keep on moving. Yeah. You don't let anything stop you. You push through. And she had the books in the hands of the people who ordered the book that day. Now, fast forward, that ended up parlaying into her gala in honor of her grandmother. And then that parlayed into the first Faithpreneur weekend, 2018. Now, I had never met Stacy, Dr. Stacy, in person, right? Never met her family in person. But she told me, hey, brother, I'm doing the event and this, that, and the other. And I want you to come and I want you to train on one of my panels. And I was like, okay. So at this point, we had already had, like 3 years of history.
Right.
And, I had helped her out in different projects here and there, had a lot of fun doing it. And so I go up to New York and, just getting up there, talk about obstacles that.
From where? Where were you living at the time?
Washington State. I'm still in Washington State.
Okay.
So flying over there was different obstacles that were happening. And everybody had their story of like all the things that happened prior to their getting there. And then so she had the first event at the Marriott Marquis, like in the heart of, right there where the ball drops for the New Year's, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So then I get in there. And so I meet Drew, her husband. And, so she's getting the, not brochures, the programs and stuff for the event. Now, I had designed up the program because it was like, okay, I need a program. So I was like, oh, let me see what I could do. So design that up, send it out to her. And then so the printer printed that off too. So Drew comes in, he's got all the equipment and stuff. And then they put me to work. So we set the stuff up. And then so we get everything set up. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I need to go and get ready and shower up before I knock everybody out. So I missed the first part of the gala, getting ready and all that. And then the hotel has a very interesting elevator where you can't just hit the button and go up. You have to wait, and interesting. I'd never seen anything like it before. So I get ready, come back down, and then so the next day was the day where we did the training and stuff. And then I geeked out with the training, talked about mastering your media, which is how that got birthed. And I was on a panel with Pam Perry, with Speakers Magazine.
Yeah.
So friends today, really good people. Let me see. I don't think was Delano on my. I'm not sure if Delano was on my panel or somebody else's panel, but met Delano and quite a few other people. Stephen with Weibo, and and I met Carmen Herrera, which I'm working with Carmen now.
Okay.
Carmen Wealth is her tag, Wealthpreneur, and she does Wealthpreneur Wednesdays on Clubhouse, and she's doing a 60-day financial challenge boot camp right now.
Okay.
So all of these things just kind of unfolded, and it all started with the one action. And then the next year, I didn't have my ticket up until 2 hours before I was supposed to get on the plane to get there. I was going through some health challenges also. My mom was like, "Do you think you should really be taking a trip up to New York with all these things going on?" I was like, yeah. I said, "I'm supposed to go." And she's like, "Okay." So the next thing, I said, "Okay, let me get on." And we were moving at the time too. So there's all these things intersecting. And I think it was designed for me to say, okay, you know what, there's just too many things going on. I'm just going to have to call Dr. Stacey, say, "Hey, look, I really would like to come, but it's just not going to happen." I was like, "No, it's supposed to happen." So I ended up getting on the plane. God told me, make sure that you get yourself fully ready, shave the whole deal before you get on the plane. I'm thinking like, now I could do that at the hotel and all that.
Right.
So I listened. Got there, hotel, for some reason, my reservation was not in place.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, okay. And then I just chuckled. I said, praise God. I said, I listened because I was already ready to go. I was conference ready. And so got there. And then I had these brand new Puma shoes. I know this is extraneous, probably get edited out. But
no, tell it.
Brand new Puma shoes that I probably wore once or twice. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear my Pumas. I'm gonna be the total geek, ready to go.
Right.
I put my shoes on, start walking. Next thing I feel crack, and then the glue on the shoe.
Oh no.
Cracks. So now my shoes are doing this.
Oh no.
I said, man, this is like embarrassing. So it did it with one shoe, and then eventually the other shoe. So I'm just like talking as I'm walking.
Oh no.
And I'm like, now this is really bad. I said, if I didn't have a strong enough self-esteem, I probably wouldn't get up on that stage.
So you still got up on the stage with your sneakers?
Stage, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
About the shoes, Yeah. So I gave people resources, and this is what you do with them and all that. And that went over very well. I met Ladrine. She's got the company Do It, and, which is delivering on ideas and thoughts.
Oh, I
and
like
she's
that.
got an amazing story. She's awesome. And, so I just met a lot of people there, in person. Some of them I met in person who I'd known for years. TC Cooper, love TC, met her there in person. And, it just was an amazing event, met Lethea Owens, amazing event.
It sounds like you met a lot of amazing people there.
Amazing people. And it was a great time. And it was an awesome demonstration that there are always going to be obstacles that present themselves.
Yes.
And you have to determine that you're going to continue to take the next step. God requires us to take the next step, not to figure out how the step is going to be taken. So we have to put our foot out and then make, contact with the pavement, and then take the next step and the next step and the next step. And when that happens, then things just start to work out because you're pushing through those issues, those obstacles that would otherwise make you come in agreement with failure.
But that's so hard to do. Like, how does somebody just get up? Like, how do they, they've fallen down so many times. They've tried to, better themselves in whatever area of their life. They've had failed relationships, all of these things. How do they just say, look, I've tried to get back up, I just can't? Like what advice would you give somebody right now who's struggling with just getting back up?
Well, I'll tell you this. The fact that you were sitting there contemplating that you can't means that you can, because you're sitting there contemplating, you're still breathing.
Yeah.
And, I had my own tragedy. A matter of fact, in the midst of that whole scenario, first year, 2018, I was on the other side of a divorce, which was the beginning of a roller coaster ride.
Wow.
2019, I was in the thick of, a whole custody battle. And the key was that, things are always going to be going on. I was in the midst of a health crisis also.
All of that at the same time?
Yeah, same time. It was like an intersection, a really bad intersection and a really good intersection at the same time. And I'll explain that. Because, okay, so when I got divorced, and it wasn't me who says, hey, I want out of this marriage. It came at the point where I thought everything was amazing and great. And that amazing and great went from, I love you, I love you, I love you. And, oh yeah, my wife, my children, this, that, and the other, to, yeah, I'm leaving you. No, wait a minute.
Wait.
Are we supposed to have like an argument? We're supposed to go like in this downward
spiral? There was none of that? There was no arguments?
None of that. There's none of that. So I was like, okay, so for me, my whole world just literally was broken apart. I'm like, I don't even know how to cope with this, because I thought that you're supposed to have arguments. They're supposed to be, stepping out on the relationship, all of these things. And none of that was there. So I was like, how do we go from this to that? So that was the first devastation, blow. Second thing was I had this health challenge back in 2012. I got bit by a spider, went really bad. I think I went septic or something like that. I got to the point where I wasn't walking anymore.
What?
Army crawling through the house, couldn't wear clothes because it would just peel my skin off. It was just really bad. And
horrible.
I looked like somebody actually dipped me into charcoal, because there was like this line that went across my body. And from that line down, it was like almost charcoal black.
Are you serious?
Skin, yeah.
From a spider bite? From
a spider bite, because the spider bite, I think what it did was it took some kind of bacteria into my system and it just started eating me, not to get too graphic.
No. I mean, this is interesting, but
yeah. And so I lost the feeling in the tissues in my arms. And, so the first indicator was one day I was in the shower. And so I'm showering up, and then when I got out and I dried myself off, there was all this blood all over the towel. And I was like, what in the world's going on? And then I realized that I had dried, like peeled the skin off my arm as I'm drying. It just chunked off. And I was like, this is probably not a good sign. And then it went from that to getting worse and worse. So I started, wrapping my arm in clay and herbs and all of that, just to keep everything under control. And my wife at the time was a nurse, and she said, do you want to go to the hospital? I was like, no. I said, because if I go in there, you and I both know I'll come out without toe tag. And she just nodded her head like, yeah, you're probably right. So I said, I'll take my chances at home.
Wow.
So I started doing a lot of herbs, and, I do have a background in herbology. And
you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I was doing was not working,
right.
So I was like, okay. And I got to the point where I tried everything that I knew and I was still rotting away, literally. And so I was at the foot of the stairs when I was, in a pity party. And I was sitting there just crying. I'm like, God, I don't want to leave my wife a widow and my children, half of an orphan. I don't know what half of an orphan is, but
yeah.
And so, we're half orphans. We're half orphans. So I said, but I don't know what to do. I've done everything that I know. I've changed my eating. I've done this, that, and the other. So I was going down this checklist. And at the end of it, I felt him say, are you done now? And I was like, yeah. So he says, okay, I need to show you something. So he says, go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom and he says, look in the mirror. He says, that's not skin. I was looking at the skin on my arms. He says, that's not skin. It's fungus and it's competing for your skin.
Oh.
You need to debride it. I think that was the first time I heard the word debride. And so now looking it up, it's like, oh, that meant to like scrape the stuff off. So I started doing that, and it came off like little microscopic mushrooms. There's a
Whoa.
lot of blood and stuff and all that, but you know, it healed afterwards. Like after I scraped it off, then I was like, I saw like new skin coming in. Within days, the skin had replaced it and it had regenerated. And so I stopped eating all carbs. All, I started making things like kimchi, which I can make some serious kimchi
Oh
now.
yeah.
Oh, I can get down with kimchi. Yeah. And so I had to now take even my eating to a different level. And now when I look back, retrospect is something else. What it teaches me is that we can never get comfortable where we are. We can never get comfortable in the knowledge that we think we have, because even at the top of our knowledge, we're so far away from the knowledge that we need to have.
So true.
So we have to dig in deeper. We have to go further. We have to press in. And those times, there are those times when you're pressing in and it feels like I'm not getting anywhere. And those are the times where you have to hold the front. You got to hold the fort and stay and continue to press and ask questions. How do I press now? Because I'm only used to pressing in this way, but how do I do it at this level so that I get the impact? And so as you're questioning and as you are getting in that space between you and God, then what ends up happening is that you feel alone. You may feel alone. I did. And then you realize, wait a minute, it's not that I'm alone and not that he's left me and not that we don't have a connection. I need to understand him at a more subtle place so that I can hear him and feel him without having to have the demonstrations that I needed before. So it comes to a place of really knowing. And that translates into when I deal with a client, when I deal with what it is that I do, I don't have the bells and whistles. I instruct bells and whistles for others. I'm like, okay, no, you need to do this. And this is what it is that's being said here through your work or whatever. So I peer deeply into what they're doing. I ask core questions. And it's because I had to ask core questions to me, and I had to get really real with myself. Even when it came to my marriage and the breakdown of my marriage, I didn't look at, you did this. I looked at, okay, so what's my role in this? Where am I at? What am I supposed to learn with this? And my biggest concern was not to be bitter, not to be angry. So I said, okay, I need you to teach me, Father, how not to be angry, how to take this for what it is. You said that all things work together for my good because I love you and I am called according to your purpose. So how does this play out? What am I supposed to get from this that I can grow? Okay.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been tough to find it in that moment to try to figure out where's the good in this, right?
Yeah. And I'm telling you, the first leverage point that he used was my children, because I couldn't be angry at their mother without harming them. Because even our anger towards our spouse or ex or whatever, when you have children involved, that hurts your children. You may not say anything about them, but your attitudes about them can hurt them, because that can shut them down in a way where they don't feel free to be able to talk to you about things that are concerning them or mention their other parent without feeling like, I can't mention my other parent because mommy or daddy's going to get angry if they hear that name. I had to make it real level. Like, you talk to me about anything, and they'll ask me, Dad, can we pray for mom? I was like, absolutely. And I had to learn, you pray, you pray, and don't get all upset and don't have a prayer with a growl. Father God, amen.
Right.
I had to really understand. And then what God was able to do with me was to give me a different level of compassion. Because he said to me one day, he says, you don't know her story. I'd like, And I sat with that for a while. I was like, you're right. And you see, and we can easily give a lot of leeway to a perfect stranger. We don't know their story, but we're willing to sit and listen to their story. But to those that we said that we love, and that we pledged our love, our undying love forever and ever, we don't give them the time of day when it comes to things on mess ups, and we don't have compassion. So we get into this war, and it's a war of will, and we try to control. And I'm like, I can't do that. So he grew a compassion in me. He says, what, everybody has a story, and you cannot fault. And I'm not saying this in relation to her or anybody else. I'm saying this a general saying now. It would be foolish to get on a person who has a cold for coughing. Why are you coughing? I have a cold. Okay. You cannot take a person who is reacting to their circumstances and say, why are you reacting? Because I haven't learned how to respond. Okay. So don't fault me for now having a reaction to the pain that I have experienced. And so after coming to that, I realized, you know what? I can't do this. I can't be angry. I have to actually, and not have to like it's my obligation, but I owe it to her, just like I owe it to every person that I meet, to have some compassion and to not now try to be like, And the same thing with me. I'm like, you know what? There's areas that I react to, a lot of areas in life that I react to. So I have to level set quite often with myself and say, okay, so you're reacting to this. Why? What is it about this that is triggering that reaction? And a lot of times it comes from the fear of rejection. Mm. The control mechanism is to be angry because I don't want you to one-up me or whatever that is, right? There's a whole slew of angles that it comes from a spherical standpoint. But when you get to that center point and you realize this is what it boils down to, now why am I there? And then you'll see what relationship, what experience created that identity for you to say, this is how I respond or react to things.
Listen,
and then, yeah.
D. Jason Hodge, man, you are dropping some like gems right now. Like these are big, like the fact that we can be more compassionate and forgiving of strangers than the people closest to us. I mean, that in itself. So then you have to go introspective. You have to go into yourself to ask yourself, well, how can I be so forgiving of strangers who may have done me wrong over and over again, but yet somebody who I'm close to, I'm supposed to love, I've had a relationship with at some point in time, I can't. Right. Like that's really powerful, like to really look at yourself and to also understand like how did I contribute to this situation? Exactly. And we're so easy to point to the other person, but like,
exactly, how
did I contribute to this? And I think those are questions that we have to ask ourselves in many types of relationships that we have, romantic relationships, family,
business relationships,
partnerships, everything.
Yeah. And you know what I learned in that whole thing is that my communication skills sucked.
Isn't that something? And you're in media all this time.
All this time, communicating with others, drawing out stories. Mine sucked. Wow. And what I realized is that, see, in my family coming up, we did not really talk about issues. If something went down, we just be like, all right. And then we just kind of,
my family's the same. My family's the same, Jim.
Yeah. And so that taught me that you don't address issues. You just kind of put them aside and then, keep on going. And if it's something that's really bad, you probably don't talk to the person for years. You have this little underlying grudge.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got to the other side of that's like, that's stupid. Because again, we talk to perfect strangers, but now this family member over here who didn't pay you back on this, or this family member over here who said this, embarrassed you or whatever, now you got this thing against them. It's like, really? Coaches, bosses, they embarrass you all the time.
Right.
You still show up to work and you still have a smile on your face.
It's true. You've still been at that job for 10 years, right. Still going on 17 years with the same boss.
Yeah. Right. How can you muster up the stuff to be okay with that, but you can't muster it up for your own family or your own friends, neighbors, whatever. So, we kind of have a life of hypocrisy, and we have to embrace that. Hey, we have to embrace that and realize that I think that we tend to put things in bad or good scenarios. And because of those scenarios, we try to override that and say, oh, no, it's not there. No, it's not there. No, I'm perfect. Everything's great. It's like, no, everything's not great.
Mm-hmm.
You have some areas in your life that just are downright messy. And you need to embrace that. Say, yeah, I'm messy over here.
No, that's great. And, you were talking about your relationship. You got 4 boys, and I see you on Instagram and with the boys. Like, I just love seeing those videos, and I love seeing the relationship and the education and the, why did you decide to just, to do that? Because sometimes, people don't show their family on social media and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide that you wanted to have these conversations with your boys and show them on social media and show that relationship? Because as a Black man, I think it's really important that we see,
right,
a man with their children. And so why did you decide to do that? Or was it just something that just gradually happened, or you made a conscious decision to do that?
Actually, they tend to pop in and like, Dad, I want to do a live video. So you want to do a live stream?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, from the time that I was periscoping first, my oldest would like to get on camera with me when I'm cooking my frittatas and talking business. So I'm like, right. So they grew up seeing that. And it's not that I liked it. I mean, for the longest time, I did not post any pictures of my children, and when family or friends would take pictures, I was like, don't put it on social.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, no, don't put it. And they're like, Jason and his, whole thing. It's like, so secretive. And I was like, well, no, I just don't think that they need to be plastered all over the place. And it came to a certain point, though, that, they were always around me. I mean, my children were with me 24/7. They started out homeschooling.
Okay.
And, they were reading from a very early age, and they were always into things. And I love being around my children.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, oh, let me make a statement. It was just like, this is what I'm doing. So, and they're like, Dad, can we do this? I was like, okay, yeah, we could do this. So
it was more just documenting. You were just documenting what was happening at the time, and you were always with them. So it was just a natural thing.
It's just life. And it's kind of funny because when, now I teach people how to do their social media, and I run some pretty successful classes on that and on their media and, telling the story and all that. And I probably break every one of my rules, because I'm like, what? Sometimes you need to just relax and need to not be on the grind.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can, I mean, there was one thing where we took the boys out and we went on those carts, where you pedal.
Oh, yeah. The pedal carts.
So, yeah, it's like, it was like 4 to a thing. And then one of them, I think but both of them had 4. And so then we're pedaling the carts and I'm live streaming and I'm saying, okay, wait, watch those people, so it was a scary ride. It was a very scary ride.
Right.
But it was fun. And I think that we get so caught up in the facade of success that we forget, who are you doing this for? Yeah. Are you doing this because you want to have memories with your family? You want to have the time freedom to do what you want to do. You want to impact lives in a certain way, but you don't want to lose yourself in that process. If that's the case, then why are you hiding the real portions of you? I don't get all dressed up to get on camera. Well, as well, you can tell right here. But, but I can dress it up when I need to. But right. The thing is that, I think there's something to be said about being real. I am corny as all get out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my children are too. When they tell a joke, I'm like, wow, that came from me, huh? But what I've seen with them is that normalizing them being them and not having to put on airs, that I think if everybody had that, there would be more people walking around in freedom. You see, sometimes we get caught up in our celebrity.
100%.
Yeah. And so then we get on a pedestal that people put us on. So we're afraid to be real. We're afraid to be normal. We're afraid to show up and it's like, wow, okay, you didn't kind of clean everything up, huh? And what happens is that you remove the permission from others who look to you for them to be real too, which creates inherent pressure. You know, I mean, there's so much pomp and circumstance, and I get it. You know, we have to show up a certain way on media. And again, when I'm dealing with clients, I'm like, you gotta have this. I'm like, and for me, it's like, why don't you have all of this stuff? You know, I mean, like I sent you that thing, the photo shot okay. And I know you're not supposed to send iPhone photos out.
No, that's fine. but you know, I think, Jason, the thing that you're really saying that's really important is that you're fine just being who you are. Just be true to who you are. Don't worry about the likes and the follows, because the people who are going to like and follow you and the people who really need your message are going to resonate with you just being the way that you are. Not because you're wearing something, not because you're using certain words, not because the filter on your on the video looks this. It's like, what is your message?
Right.
Who
And think about it like this. If you have to do all of that to get the person, what are you going to have to do to keep them? So my thing is like, look, if you're not interested in what I say or how I think, then all the other stuff that I do on the outside is not going to matter, because I can make it like this, and then I can fool myself into believing that I've got friends and followers and all that. You're following the persona. You're not following the person.
That's good.
So I'm like, yeah, I'd rather build something that's real, so that when I think about it, I could pick up the phone and say, hey, Danny, what you got going on? Let's go grab a bite to eat over here and feel comfortable about that, instead of like, are you going to pick me up in the rolls?
Yeah, right.
Is this a 5-star restaurant?
Right. And even if I do pick you up in the rolls, I expect you to be wearing something, a certain outfit.
You know, I'm going to
better
put on
come
my
in the
suit. You know,
right.
Like, really?
No, but you know, Jason, one of the things that I see, you know, I talk to, you know, coaching clients all the time about, I say, you got to raise a bar. A bar is an acronym. Raise your level of asking for what you want, believing that you're going to get it, taking action and receiving it. And people are okay sometimes with asking, you know, most of the time we're not good with all of that, but we're okay with asking sometimes. Sometimes the belief comes and it goes. Sometimes we take a little bit of action and we don't. But I find the biggest challenge for people is the receiving part, because we expect it to be a certain way. And so one of the common themes that I see with you, and it's not even a theme, just the way that your life is kind of unfolded, is that you just receive things. You allow God, the universe, to just flow within you. And so like, it's no, now I understand how you can do all of these things, like how the food came about and eating healthy, right? It came as a result of a spider biting you, how you got into media.
No. The eating healthy was before that.
Oh, it was before that. But the studying and all that stuff.
Doing. Yeah.
Oh, the herbs.
It's because of the herbs and all that I knew what I thought I knew to do.
Okay.
Yeah, that was from the time I was a teenager.
Oh, so you've been
from junior high, I was on this path.
Wow. Yeah. It just seems like the fact that you allow things to come in and just unfold when you're not really tied to the outcome. So many of us are tied to the outcome of things that we miss the opportunities.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know, and I see that.
Yeah, totally.
So I got a couple more questions for you, then we're going to wrap up. But like, what's one thing, because you know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are probably listening, and people have a business and they're really trying to get their product or their service or their message out to the masses. You know, what's one or two tips that you would give people from like a media perspective in terms of like how they get their story, their message, their product, or their service out to the masses?
Right. Well, I would say that the major thing is to really discover how you can serve your marketplace. Okay. Too many of us are going into it looking at what's in it for me. And nobody cares about what's in it for you. It's what's in it for them with it. WIIFT. Wait. Yeah.
With him? Yeah.
Yeah. No, with it.
With him. What's in it for me?
No. With it. What's in it?
Oh, with it.
Okay. We have to think with it. They think with them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying from their perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but from the entrepreneur's perspective and the business owner's perspective, yeah, what's in it for them? And I have this saying, I've never in my life seen a farmer expect to harvest anything that he has not planted. And we spend so much time nowadays trying to harvest before the tree has even broken ground. It's not even a sapling. We're like, where's the fruit? We're like, where's the water?
Yeah.
Where's the fertilizer? Where's the nutrients? Where's the nurturing? So we have to be willing to build our forests. And we have to nurture our forests. And we do that by nurturing other people's forests. They see it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
If we spend so much time on thinking about us, you're going to grind it out. Straight up. You're going to grind it out. You're going to have a hard way going. You will get there if you just keep at it. But you're not going to get there by people putting you on and saying, you got to know this person right here, because it's all been about you.
Right.
But when you operate in, straight pure service, doors open because your gifts have made room for you. You see, I ended up becoming great friends with Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, not because of anything other than I served. And I wasn't serving because I'm like, ooh, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, let me get in there and strategize. It was like, no, I saw a need. I didn't even know who she was, to tell you the truth, when we first met.
Right.
I didn't know that she was an international speaker and did all this amazing work. That wasn't what it was about. And most of the people that I know that I'm good friends with now, I didn't know their background. Even though I'm in media, I'm very green on what's out there in that sense.
Okay.
To the back end of things. But the people who are on the forefront of it, inconsequential.
Mm-hmm.
My question is what kind of impact are you making inside of your marketplace? And if you can't answer that question, then that's where we need to start. You need to figure out what your relevancy is. So figure out your relevancy, don't try to harvest where you haven't planted. And you'll find that if you are working on somebody else's forest, they will throw you some fruit here and there. And before you know it, you got a forest of your own.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I love that, Jason. That's so good, man. Man, you dropped some knowledge in here. I got two more questions for you that I ask everybody. So what does grind mean to you?
Grind to me, like I look at the visual of that and it like just wears you down. And so I had to, and I still work on that, getting out of the grind of things, because the word says his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so for me, the grind, if you will, that we should be doing is trying to find or grind our way down to that core. Like, what am I supposed to be doing with this talent that you've given me so that I can now speak and operate from that place? Because you don't have to remember that. You don't have to script it. You don't have to work your way up to that. The real thing is the real thing, and it impacts every time without fail. When you are inside of your element and you are speaking from that core place, the power that comes through your words, it impacts people, impacts, spaces. It changes the energy, because that is the realest place that you can get. The realest place is your core, your design. So now when you deliver, it's like, Houston, we have liftoff. This is what it's about. This is what I'm here to do. And this is how what I do impacts you. So you aren't in a space of questioning, like, is this or is this not? You move, and you're purely moving, and that energy moves you to the destination. And it helps the others you are moving get there. And then it's like, it gives you these moments of clarity. It gives them moments of clarity and transformation. When you have clientele who will break down in tears because they finally hear their authentic voice, and they hear you hearing them, and they see you seeing them, it's a transformation, because it's like, I never knew that it could be like this and that it should be like this. There's too many liars. And I'm not saying this disparaging. There's too many liars in business right now. They're afraid to tell the truth, so they end up being trapped by their own business. I refuse to be trapped by my business. Okay. So that means that I have to constantly dig to know the authentic reason on why I'm doing things. And that way, so long as I don't violate that, it's going to win. And it may not show up the way that I think it's going to. Inconsequential, doesn't matter. The fact that it wins means that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And that means that I'm going to get to the finish line and I'm going to get there with a whole lot more friends than if I were to just run alone, because I'm grinding it out.
Ah, that's so good. That's really good. And my last question is, what does gratitude mean to you?
Gratitude. Gratitude, that is something that we should have every single day, if nothing more than we woke up. Because when you wake up, no matter how bad things seem, you have another opportunity. Whether the opportunity is to adjust your perspective on what you consider bad, or if the opportunity is to change or transform that which is bad. When you're grateful, you see, when you get off into the ingratitude, if that's a word, what you're saying is that all of the blessings that I have mean nothing, because there's one little thing that has now derailed me that takes precedence over everything that God has blessed me with. And to me, that's ridiculous, because that's like spitting in the face of God. Yeah, I don't like the fact that, I got this thing happen, repo, whatever. I don't know, whatever you got going on in your life. And then you turn all of your attention over to that. Like 99 people could tell you, oh my gosh, this was amazing, this, that, and the other. Then one person says, I didn't like that booger in your nose. Oh my gosh, I had a booger in my nose. And so you're like, wait a minute. So the 99, my show up was powerful enough for them to override the booger in my nose. And I'm going to get caught on the fact that this one person saw the booger in my nose. So now I'm going to go into a state of depression, like, oh yeah, and I was on national TV with a booger in my nose. And now what do? I'm the laughing stock. 99 people just told you how much transformation that they got from your presence. So we have to quit getting stuck on stupid, We get stuck on stupid things sometimes. And it's something I have to remind myself of quite often. Don't get stuck on stupid today, Jason. Keep on moving.
Wow. Jason Hodge, man, thank you so much. Like, you dropped a lot of knowledge. One of the things I love about you too is, ever since I met you on Clubhouse, I don't even know how long ago, 5 months ago or something, I just, the first time I heard you speak, I just heard the authenticity, the transparency, the openness, the honesty, and the realness. And that's what kind of made me gravitate towards you. And then once I started finding out all the amazing things you're doing with your media company and being a chef and all that kind of stuff, I was like, I really like this guy. And we've had an opportunity to connect over Clubhouse, and, you had me on your podcast and all that other stuff. And so I just want to thank you, man. I just want to thank you for just being you, for everything that you're doing out here in the world to help entrepreneurs and businesses just really tell their stories and impact the lives of other people. And, before we go, let people know where they can find you, how they can connect with you, all that's good stuff.
Yeah, I have a resource page, if you will, and it just continues to build over the days. I'm like, oh, throw this on there. And if you go to asktjh.live/resources, and that's ask as https://ask ASKTJH, like D. Jason Hodge, .live/resources. And then you'll get to my resources page, and there's a whole lot of stuff on there. If you are starting a business, if you need stuff that deals with the legalities of things, specifically internet legalities, like if you need, your legal papers, your privacy policies, all those type of things for your website or for your agreements with, virtual assistants or work for hire for graphic artists and things like that, so that you own your stuff when everything is finished, then that's, one of the buttons on there will take you to the resource that I use for that. If you are looking for ways to automate your business and to scale things up and to put systems in place that can not only build your site, but like we have one project that we're finishing up, and it is the answer to the Airbnb thing for Airbnb folks or real estate people or folks who have stuff that they want to convert into that, from maps to, all the geeky stuff. Like, it makes Airbnb want to go home and take some lessons.
Wow.
So yeah, so if you're looking for real resources, I'm a no fluff guy. So you get to the page and you'll see, wow, okay, yeah, he's really true. It's no fluff here. It's buttons with words on it. Says, okay, if you're looking for this, push this button. Looking for this, push this button. There's a button on there where I go into the repurposing your content that I taught for Sister Sense for her Back to Business conference. And, so I go into just how you look at your content, how you look at repurposing, because people think that repurposing is, I taped this thing and then I pushed it to Facebook, Twitter, this, that, and the other. And they don't realize, no, that's not repurposing. Repurposing is when you repurpose it for the platform, for the people on the platform. You actually take a little modicum of caring. Okay. Who is this reaching and how do I need to reach them? I'm not going to go into this space and start talking Chinese to you because you won't understand me. So I need to learn the language, and then I need to present this in this language. So I teach that inside of that workshop. How do you go through and look at even building out your editorial calendar? How do you make sure that you're doing the right thing? There's like levels to this, and it's really easier than you think. Tedious, but it's easier. It's just common sense.
Well, thank you. I'm definitely going to put that link. I'll put that link in the show notes, everybody, so you can have get that access that easily. But the Jason Hodge, thank you so much for being here, my brother. I really, really appreciate it. And for those of you, this is your first time tuning in, make sure that you subscribe and leave a review. And we have a new episode of the Grind and Gratitude Show that drops every single Monday. That's it for now. I will catch you in the next episode. Take care.